Hey everyone, Nigel and Luke here, and welcome to Crime Zone.
Authorities in Hopkinsville, Kentucky said that a local woman survived a terrifying ordeal this week after she was forced to jump from a moving car to escape a disturbing alleged kidnapping. The whole thing went down sometime on June 7th as the woman was driving around with the suspect, later identified as 27-year-old Deontay Walker Coleman. Though the victim's name has not been released at this time, several sources state that she is in a relationship with Coleman. The trouble apparently began when the woman noticed some, quote, information on Coleman's phone. It's unclear exactly what this was, but what we do know is that it led to an argument. And from that point on, Coleman reportedly refused to leave her or let the female victim be on her own. Not long after, Coleman allegedly attacked her. The woman later told police that she was repeatedly punched in the head before being strangled into unconsciousness. When she came to, she said Coleman was naked and holding her at gunpoint. She was then allegedly forced to perform sexual acts against her will. Even after this, Coleman allegedly would not let the victim leave, and by this time had taken her phone and keys. With no other way to escape or call for help, the woman decided she only had one option, and she threw herself from Coleman's moving vehicle. She was eventually able to get away and contact police. When officers responded to the woman's 911 call, they reportedly noticed choke marks on her neck and could see that she was having trouble breathing. Coleman was later arrested and has now been charged with first-degree sexual abuse, first-degree strangulation, and kidnapping. He currently remains in custody.
Representatives from the Las Vegas police say that a years-long social media feud needlessly ended in tragedy this week, when one of the people involved in the dispute allegedly pulled a gun on his rival, fatally shooting him and his wife. The whole situation was mainly between two content creators, 44-year-old Rodney Finley and 41-year-old Manuel Ruiz. Both men, who are better known by their online names Finny the Legend and Sin City Mannywise, were live streamers on YouTube based out of Las Vegas, and for several years they had been in an ugly rivalry to see who could have the bigger channel. It's not clear exactly when the animosity started between the two men, but most sources we came across point to one incident in particular on Halloween of 2023. On that day, Rodney Manuel and Rodney's wife Tanisha Finley apparently got into a physical altercation on Fremont Street. According to police reports from the time, Manuel told officers that Tanisha had hit him with a selfie stick and punched him in the face, while Rodney had pushed him. The Finleys responded by saying that Manuel had pepper sprayed Tanisha. From that point on, the feud continued to escalate, though it seems that for the longest time, this was relegated to nasty comments and insults exchanged on YouTube and other social media platforms. However, all of that changed at the end of last week. Sometime on the evening of June 8th, Rodney and Tanisha were in the middle of one of their usual live streams outside the Bellagio Casino and Hotel when they were approached by Manuel. Moments later, he allegedly pulled out a gun and began firing at them both. The disturbing incident was partially captured on Rodney and Tanisha's own stream. Though emergency responders were immediately called, both Rodney and Tanisha were pronounced dead a short time later. In the meantime, casino surveillance footage reportedly showed Manuel fleeing the scene, throwing out some of his clothing in a nearby valet area. He ultimately turned himself in the following day. While no motive has been officially confirmed in the double killings, the internet is currently swimming with rumors about what caused the deadly escalation in the feud. Many seem to believe that Manuel snapped after the views on his videos were going down, and more people were tuning into Rodney's content instead. Regardless of the truth, though, what almost everyone seems to agree on was that the feud and the crime were completely senseless. At the time of this recording, Manuel Ruiz remains in custody. He is now facing 2 charges of open murder with a deadly weapon.
Representatives from the NYPD say that they are on the hunt for a pair of dangerous suspects this week, following a terrifying and brazen home invasion robbery that left a local family traumatized. The whole thing unfolded shortly after 9 a.m. on June 9th, when the family in question was in the middle of their usual Monday morning routines. Suddenly they were plunged into chaos, though, when 2 men came bursting in through the front door of their home in Queens' Whitestone neighborhood. Moments earlier, the suspects had been walking down the street outside, with one of them wearing a reflective vest and the other carrying a large Amazon box. It seems they were attempting to pose as delivery workers to hide their true intentions. After forcing their way inside, the pair pulled guns on the 43-year-old homeowner, his 39-year-old wife, and their 3 children. All of the family members were ordered down into the basement, where they were tied up and their mouths were duct taped. They waited there helplessly as the 2 armed men ransacked their residence, stealing $15,000 worth of cash and jewelry from a safe. The men did finally leave without hurting anyone, though not before taking the family's silver Chrysler minivan as well. A short time later, the father managed to free himself and went outside to get help. A neighbor who saw the man running down the street with duct tape still attached to him called 911. While the family's minivan was recovered a few blocks away, unfortunately, by the time police arrived, the suspects were long gone. The NYPD say that they are still investigating the case, though so far they have not been able to identify the culprits. Anyone with information about the disturbing case is asked to reach out through Crime Stoppers.
Authorities across 3 different southeastern states say that they are piecing together the details of a complex and disturbing case after a Georgia man allegedly murdered both of his parents, threatening other family members before he was finally arrested while praying at the side of a roadway. The case began shortly before 11 a.m. on June 6th when the suspect, 37-year-old Nicholas Kirchner Prola, showed up at a residence belonging to several family members in Sumter County, South Carolina. After pulling out a gun, Kirchner allegedly pointed the weapon at multiple people, proceeding to hold one of them hostage while he ordered another to go into the house and get someone. He threatened to shoot the hostage in the head if the victims didn't comply with his demands, and at one point made this chilling statement, quote, "I've already killed 2 people. I'll kill some more." Understandably, at the time, Kirchner's victims were preoccupied with surviving their own ordeal, so they didn't exactly have the bandwidth to ask him what he meant by this. While some of them called police, another managed to scare him off by exiting the house with their own firearm. Sadly, the context behind the 37-year-old's disturbing comment was about to become all too clear. It happened about an hour and a half later when authorities nearly 500 miles away in the city of Largo, Florida, responded to a residence on Saunders Avenue. Officers had been called for a welfare check there after they were contacted by someone who said that an employee that lived at the address hadn't shown up for work. When police arrived, they found the bodies of the 2 homeowners, 64-year-old Stephen Eric Kirchner and 53-year-old Elizabeth Kirchner. They had each been fatally shot and were lying in their living room. As I'm sure you've already guessed, Stephen and Elizabeth were the parents of Nicholas Kirchner Prola, though understandably it took some time for authorities to connect the dots between the double murder and what had happened in South Carolina. However, thankfully, by that afternoon, Kirchner was located and placed under arrest. The arrest took place after a motorist in Tolliver County, Georgia, spotted the 37-year-old by complete chance at the side of a local highway. The driver suspected something was up after they saw Kirchner dressed in all white, with the exception of a red baseball cap, kneeling with one of his hands raised over his head. It appeared that he was praying. Upon being confronted by a deputy shortly before 4 p.m., Kirchner reportedly cooperated and explained that he was armed, but that his weapon was safely secured. He also told police where they could find a stolen Nissan Pathfinder that he had abandoned along Interstate 20. By far the most disturbing part of this whole thing, though, was when Kirchner allegedly started talking about his parents. According to police, he admitted to murdering them multiple times, referring to the fatal shootings as, quote, righteous kills. At the time of this recording, Kirchner remains in custody. He is currently awaiting extradition to Florida on a felony warrant for 2 counts of premeditated first-degree murder.
Representatives from the Maryland State Police released a gut-wrenching update in the case of a missing young girl this week, announcing that not only did they believe that they found her dead, but that her own mother has now been charged with her murder. The case began on the evening of June 10th, when police in Newark, Delaware, received a frantic call from 31-year-old Darian Randall. Randall told officers that she had been driving with her 3-year-old daughter, Nola Dinkins, when the girl had become upset. When she pulled over to see what was wrong and try to calm her daughter down, suddenly she was approached by a man with a gun. She explained that the man had abducted Nola and had fled in a vehicle being driven by a female accomplice. She described the perpetrators as being an unknown white male and female who were traveling in a dark-colored SUV. After receiving this report, Newark police put out an Amber Alert with these details and immediately launched an investigation. However, by the next morning, that alert had already been canceled. Police now say that's because upon further questioning, Darian Randall's story began to fall apart. However, the awful truth about what had happened apparently wouldn't come to light until investigators went to Randall's home in the town of Northeast Maryland and began speaking with her boyfriend, 44-year-old Cedric Britton. In an update released by the Maryland State Police this week, representatives revealed that after speaking with Britton, they located a human body in a vacant parking lot close to his and Randall's address. The body was, quote, completely wrapped in saran wrap and was consistent with an emaciated child. Sadly, it's believed that these are the remains of Nola Dinkins. According to investigators, Randall has since admitted to fabricating the story about the kidnapping. It's now alleged that instead, Nola was killed during an assault in which her mother hit her between 15 and 20 times with a belt. After realizing that Nola was dead, Randall reportedly drove around with her body before putting her in a suitcase. It's alleged that Britton helped to dispose of her remains. As a result, Randall is now facing a number of charges, including first and second degree murder and first degree child abuse resulting in death of a minor under 13. Britton, meanwhile, has been charged with offenses including accessory to first and second degree murder after the fact and failure to report child death. While the case has understandably left many people heartbroken, none have been more affected than Nola's biological father and his family. In an interview with local media outlets, the 3-year-old's paternal grandmother said that her son had been involved in a custody battle with Darian Randall and had tried to stop her from taking Nola out of Indiana. She told reporters in part, quote, "My son is well loved. He is going to get what he needs, and we are going to get the justice that we need, and we are going to get that closure, because he will never be alone."
Authorities in the city of Murray, Kentucky say that a notorious local nuisance is facing fresh charges following a bizarre incident last week in which he allegedly released a live animal into a crowded bar as revenge for being kicked out. The whole thing started shortly after 9 p.m. on June 6th when the man in question, 40-year-old Jonathan Mason, walked into the Big Apple Grill and Bar, located on the 1000 block of Arcadia Circle. Mason had barely had a chance to grab a drink, though, before he was approached by one of the bartenders there and asked to leave. The reason for this was that Mason had already been banned from the establishment previously, and he had quite the reputation around the city's bars in general for causing problems. In fact, locals know him better by the nickname Cowboy Cody, which I promise will make sense in just a second. Anyway, after spotting Mason, the bartender, 37-year-old Mary Hafner, took it upon herself to ask him to leave. She'd worked there for a number of years, and her relationship with the 40-year-old was better than most of her coworkers. She figured if she just asked Mason to go nicely, maybe he wouldn't cause a scene. For a split second, it seemed like maybe this had worked. Mason said, quote, "Oh, I see how it is. They sent a pretty face out here to distract me." But he did head towards the door. Unfortunately, though, moments later, he returned, and this time, he wasn't alone. To the disbelief of everyone present, Mason proceeded to release a wild raccoon into the bar before fleeing in his vehicle. In video footage recorded of the strange incident, an employee at the bar can be seen crawling around on the floor as the frightened animal scurries between tables and chairs. This was apparently against the advice of Mary, who said that she would take care of the raccoon. And from the sounds of it, her colleague should have listened. Moments later, after grabbing the animal's tail, the male employee was bitten by the raccoon. Because, what would you do if someone tried to grab your tail? According to reports, the man later had to get a rabies shot. In the end, Mary did get everything back under control, though. After nonchalantly wrapping the raccoon in a towel, she carried it outside and set it free. She later told reporters, quote, "I'm a Kentucky girl. I had no problem catching him." As for Mason, he was quickly arrested by police later that same evening, though not before making things difficult by refusing to exit his vehicle or roll down the window so officers could speak to him. However, it seems authorities pretty much expected this given their history with him. You see, this is far from the 40-year-old's first run-in with police, and not even Mason's first animal-related crime. Just a few months ago, in December of 2024, he was arrested twice within 2 days, following incidents where he led officers on separate drunken chases through the city while riding a mule. At least one of those incidents also started at the Big Apple Grill and Bar when employees saw Mason beating the animal with a whip in the parking lot. As for where Mason got the raccoon involved in this week's incident, it's believed he caught it on the farm where he lives earlier that same day. He is now facing a number of charges, including third-degree criminal trespass, second-degree assault, resisting arrest, and failure to maintain insurance.
Representatives from Texas's Denton Police Department released chilling new details in a local murder case this week, announcing that they had arrested a man after he had allegedly killed his girlfriend, then spent several days sleeping next to her body. The whole thing began last month on May 19th, when Denton police were called to the Timberlinks apartments located on the 5200 block of Parr Drive. They were asked to conduct a welfare check after residents reported a foul odor coming from one of the second-floor units there. When officers arrived, they quickly found the heartbreaking source of the unsettling smell. It was the body of a woman who lived in the apartment, 39-year-old Lavera Wardell. Based on evidence at the scene, police concluded that Lavera had been fatally shot in the head. She was lying on her bed, and though there were indications of a cleanup, it was clear she had been there for at least several days. However, her fiancé, who also lived there, 52-year-old William Otto III, was nowhere to be found. Attention quickly turned towards Otto, when authorities launched an investigation and recovered, among other things, damning surveillance video. The footage reportedly showed Otto purchasing a large amount of cleaning supplies at multiple locations on May 13th. Otto was eventually tracked and located in the city of Mount Pleasant, approximately 150 miles away. He was arrested at a local motel on June 2nd, after which he apparently offered a horrifying confession. According to an arrest affidavit, Otto told detectives that he had killed Lavera all the way back on May 6th. He claimed that the two of them got into a fight, during which she came at him with a knife, so he fired at her with a shotgun. Arguably the most disturbing part came afterwards, though. Otto stated that he partially cleaned up the scene before sleeping next to Lavera's body. He explained that he, quote, wanted to lay with her, and that he had done this for at least 3 days until the smell became overwhelming. After that, he cleaned up the rest of the blood off the floors and walls and fled. At the time of this recording, police say that they are still investigating all of these details and have now charged Otto with murder and tampering with evidence. However, many now want to know why it took so long for the crime to be uncovered in the first place. In an interview with local media, a resident of the apartment complex told reporters that Lavera and Otto's unit is right above the complex's leasing office in a busy area. Currently, William Otto remains in custody on a $160,000 bond.
Officials across the United States are condemning political violence and praising the swift and dedicated actions of law enforcement this week, following a pair of disturbing attacks on 2 Democratic politicians and their spouses, crimes that left 2 victims dead and another 2 seriously injured. The awful situation began shortly after 2 a.m. on June 14th, when police in the city of Champlin, Minnesota were called about a violent incident at the home of a state lawmaker. In 911 calls, authorities were told that 2 victims, State Senator John Hoffman and his wife Yvette, had been shot by an unknown masked intruder. In chilling surveillance footage later obtained by investigators, the perpetrator could be seen showing up at the couple's home that morning dressed in police-style tactical gear and driving a Ford SUV equipped with lights meant to make it look like a patrol vehicle. The whole disguise was apparently quite convincing. That was, with the exception of an incredibly unsettling, full head covering latex mask. Moments after arriving at the Hoffmans' home, the suspect allegedly identified himself as a police officer before entering the residence armed with multiple weapons and opening fire. Though State Senator Hoffman and his wife were reportedly hit a staggering 9 and 8 times respectively during the assault, when real emergency responders arrived at the scene, they were alive. The 2 were rushed to the hospital with very serious injuries, but according to the latest available reports, both are expected to survive. Unfortunately, though, that would not be the case with the next call authorities received that morning. After realizing that they might be dealing with a targeted attack, Champlin police contacted their counterparts in the nearby suburb of Brooklyn Park. Just a short time later, the decision was made to head to the residence of another lawmaker, Minnesota State Representative and former House Speaker Melissa Hortman. While this was initially out of precaution, everyone's worst fears were soon confirmed. When officers arrived at Representative Hortman's house, they spotted the same fake Ford police vehicle that was captured on surveillance at the first crime scene. They reportedly approached the home just as the male suspect was coming outside. The man allegedly opened fire on police, leading to a shootout. However, during the exchange, he retreated back into the residence and was apparently able to flee out a rear door. Following the gunfight, emergency responders went into the house, where they found Melissa Hortman and her husband Mark also suffering from multiple gunshot wounds. Sadly, they were both soon pronounced dead. As you might imagine, the fact that two Democratic politicians had been attacked in an identical way in such a short amount of time only added to suspicions that the crimes were targeted. Further evidence of this was uncovered when authorities searched the suspect's vehicle and found documents that included a list of at least 70 other potential targets along with their addresses. While investigators have not released the full contents of these documents at this time, it's been reported that among the intended victims were several other Minnesota Democratic politicians, including Governor Tim Walz, Senators Amy Klobuchar and Tina Smith, and Representatives Ilhan Omar and Kelly Morrison. In addition to the names, police say a number of abortion providers and clinics were listed. In response to this deeply disturbing evidence, local and state law enforcement went into overdrive in both investigating the situation and searching for the perpetrator. Before long, it was announced that the suspect had been identified as a 57-year-old man named Vance Luther Bolter. Images of Bolter were widely distributed to the public, and authorities began what has now been referred to as the state's largest ever manhunt, an operation that reportedly involved more than 20 different SWAT teams. The necessity for this apparently had to do not only with the extreme violence of the crimes and the ongoing threat, but also because of Bolter's background. Investigators discovered that he had extensive security training both from the U.S. military and private security firms. They also later revealed that he was armed with at least 3 rifles and a handgun at the time of the 2 shooting attacks. The tense situation continued for nearly 2 full days, until on the evening of June 15th, authorities located Bolter in a rural part of Sibley County. He was reportedly arrested without issue and is now facing 2 counts of second-degree murder, as well as 2 counts of attempted second-degree murder. While Bolter is now safely in custody, understandably, many questions still remain. Perhaps the most obvious is, what was the motive behind all of this? Right now, unfortunately, nothing has been confirmed, and it seems that much of Bolter's background remains murky, if not downright contradictory. For instance, while much of his online presence appears to speak about his extensive training and his work as CEO for a mysterious security business called the Red Lion Group, some of those who know Bolter have claimed in interviews that his company didn't really do anything and failed to ever get off the ground. Other reports state that he spent a good chunk of his career working in the food industry. As for his political views, police have not confirmed anything, but once again, friends of Bolter's who have spoken to the media claim that he was socially conservative and was a Trump voter. One friend told reporters that he was particularly against abortion, which could explain some of the targets on his alleged hit list. That being said, police have noted that they also found a stack of flyers in Bolter's fake police vehicle that said "No Kings" on them, an apparent reference to the ongoing nationwide protests against the Trump administration. Right now, this is more or less all we know, though more information is likely to be revealed in the coming days. The situation is still developing. Before we wrap up, we'd like to take a second to give a huge shout out to everyone who has made it this far into the video. Seriously, thank you so much for watching. If you found today's upload interesting and informative, we'd be honored if you'd consider liking and subscribing, as well as hitting the notification bell and selecting all notifications to stay up to date with our latest releases. If you're looking for additional ways to help support the channel, we'd love to have you join us over on Patreon. Patrons get ad-free and early access to all of our content, as well as 4 additional stories per week for each of our Crimes of the Week and Crimes of the Week International videos. You can learn more at patreon.com/crimezone, where you'll also find some of the fine folks whose names are currently on screen. All that being said, we understand that not everyone has the means to support financially, and that's totally okay. We appreciate every like, sub, share, and comment that you send our way. Once again, thanks so much everyone, and take care.